This week, as I was contemplating exactly what to speak on today, I thought, well, this is the Sunday before Easter, and I started to work on a sermon about Jesus coming into Jerusalem, and then my whole message just kind of changed, and I just felt I was not to speak on that necessarily, but indirectly, yes. And my message today is, when there is pain in your heart. And one of the greatest mysteries of human life is the mystery of pain. Again and again, we have to ask ourselves, why has this come upon me? Why physical illness? Why handicaps? Why did this individual die? Why must I bear this disappointment? Why must I face what I face in life? There is pain in our bodies, the pain in our minds, and the pain in our hearts. Why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be? So maybe if we want to have a better understanding of why pain in life exists, we need to look at pain in the following manner and keep in mind several facts about it. Number one, every possible blessing is also a possible pain. It may stun you, but that's the way it is. Let me give you an illustration. Many of you guys can relate because you've had children. And you'll experience this as they get a little bit older. I bought roller skates for my children years ago, as my parents did for me. And Don and I, we really enjoyed watching our kids skate up down the sidewalks, and we'd take them to the roller rink. And we wanted to have our children experience the same joys of skating that we had. I really enjoyed it. I'd zip around, and the problem is I often fell. And boy, that wooden floor and that sidewalk really hurt. And when we do certain things with an expectation of joy, sometimes we often forget that there's an expectation of pain associated with that joy. It increases the possibility of falling and being hurt when we experience certain joys. So, our girls would fall hard on the sidewalk and they would hurt themselves, and they would start crying, and we'd go over and try and comfort them. And in that instance, maybe you could say that Don and I were the cause of our girls' pain. And in a sense that we did, because we provided them the skates, but it also increased their possibilities of joy and pleasure in zipping around the neighborhood and zipping around the roller rink with the wind in their face as they were skating. By giving them the skates, we allowed them the possibility of getting hurt. But it wasn't in any way, shape, form, or fashion our will that they be hurt. It would have been very different if we had run out while they had their skates on and tripped them and made them fall down and hurt themselves. If a child is killed in an auto accident, I'm sure that this has happened more than once. Is the father or mother to blame for that because she allowed that child to drive? No, not at all. The parents didn't intend for the child to be killed. The parent may have said, it is possible for one to be killed in an automobile wreck. Therefore, because I love you and I don't want to see you injured, I'm not going to allow you to drive or do anything that might harm you. And I've known some parents that were just about like that. Not just with driving, but other things. On the other hand, the parent wanted the child to have the advantage and pleasure of owning a car, being independent and driving. So they permitted that child to drive. But it had the possibility of disaster. God has provided wonderful things for us to enjoy. Many things for us to enjoy. Now take love, for example. All of us have been in love. Love brings the greatest joys and blessings that we can ever experience. But it also has the potential to bring us the greatest pain. And my wife can tell you I might be a pain often. God gave men and women the capacity to love one another and bring children into the world. And we marry, we build homes, and into those homes come children. And thereby increasing the love even more in our hearts. But some tragic events happen and our hearts become broken. But that's simply one of the prices that we have to pay for being in love. And for the ability to love. God gave us the capacity to dream, to hope, to aspire to great things. But sometimes we do not realize those dreams. Our hopes are dashed down to the ground, and our fondest ambitions are thwarted. Sometimes by ourselves, sometimes by others. We don't know. Then we know the pain of disappointment and frustration. On the other hand, we also have the possibility of knowing the thrill of achievements, becoming a success in life. In my case, getting a degree is a wonderful achievement. But in order to have the possibility of one, we have to be willing to accept the possibility of the other. A lot of us here follow sports. A team goes out on a field to play a game. They give their best effort, but are still soundly beaten, and it's painful to bear. Well, anybody that's a follower of the Cowboys the last few years knows that that's a distinct possibility. We have to be able to bear the pain of the defeat. But that doesn't negate the wonderful achievements they have had before and might have again. But they could have avoided that defeat that they've suffered before by just saying, we're not going to play the game anymore. Just say, oh, we may be defeated. I don't think we're going to play anymore. But by doing that, they would have denied themselves and their followers the opportunity to be able to win the wonderful game that they play. And if one plays the game, then that person must accept both of the possibilities. The possibilities of winning and the possibility of losing. Joy or pain. If you study life, you will see that life's possibilities come in pairs. Goodness and evils. Short and tall, strong and weak, hot and cold, black and white, pleasure, pain, hair, no hair. The existence of one possibility carries with it the possibility of the other. If there were no pain, then there would be no real pleasures in life either. That's a simple fact. Point 2 is that pain and suffering in this life is one of the prices that we have to pay for belonging to the human family. And again, we have to ask, why do the innocent suffer? It's a part of the human condition. We have set up a court system in our country. We have judges and juries. And a person, if they are accused of some crime, is usually given a fair trial as best as possible. If a person is found to be guilty, then he is punished in accordance with the extent of the crime. And we use great care for the most part to protect the innocent and only punish those who are guilty. But in life, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Take the horrible wreck that just happened this week with a truck crossing the median and slamming into a busload of children and chaperones on a way to go look at college. Now, of course, we have to readily admit that sin can bring suffering both here and in the hereafter. Just a fact. But it's also true that some who have suffered the most were innocent of any crime. And I know that probably every person here has suffered for some reason. You didn't do anything wrong. There's a father and mother who have lived righteously, and yet their son or daughter, they go astray, and it breaks our hearts when that happens. We have to ask ourselves, what did we do wrong that made our son and daughter do what they did? Oftentimes there's nothing you did. They had a choice. Take the Jewish people, for example. There are some who would love to say that all their suffering for all the time they've been here on the earth is because these people rejected Jesus, or because they crucified Jesus, or some other wrong excuse to blame their suffering on these people. But I tell you that nothing they did as individuals or a nation were because of any particular sin on their part. You can't justify trying to kill 6 million people the way that Hitler did on anything other than pure evil. You can't lay that crime upon, oh, this person sinned or they sinned as a nation. No, you can't do that because God doesn't do that. Some of the finest saints of God are made to lie in great beds of pain. Some of the most consecrated lives wind up bearing the burdens of great disappointment. However, but if we insist ourselves that God set up a world on an individual basis and allowing each one of us to suffer merely to the extent of our own wrongdoings, then we must also restrict all of the joys to those that we can bring on ourselves. Now think about this. Look into your own life and see how much that you personally enjoy that have come about through the efforts of others. just what we're about to enjoy after this church. It didn't come about through me, or just TJ, or just Ruth. It's going to be a community effort to feed all of us, and each one participated in providing the joys that we will experience. Would you like to give up those privileges of enjoying the benefit of others? Let's take your car, for example. Could you make one all by yourself? Then even if you could, you'd have to go out and drill an oil well and go refine the oil and make it into gasoline. Then you'd have to go out, dig some gravel and take some tar and make you a road to drive on. It's pretty much an impossible task for any of us to personally do this. The same thing with electricity. Yeah, some of us could go cobble together some electrical panels and wire it together, but in order to do that, we'd have to go mine the rare earth minerals to make the solar panels and the copper to make the wire. We enjoy the benefit of the work of a lot of other people, not just our own efforts. Suppose that you are sick. If we lived in an individual world, we couldn't call a physician. We'd be our own physician. There would be no hospital to be carried to and no nurse to treat you for sympathetic care. The medicines which brilliant and dedicated minds have discovered would be unavailable to you too. And then when you died, it'd be rather hard to bury yourself. We enjoy a multitude of blessings which we did not cause. And in the same way, we often suffer many pains which are not our fault either. Oftentimes, people have said to me personally, "What have I done to deserve this?" Most of the time, the answer is nothing. You did nothing to deserve this. Neither have you done anything to deserve your many blessings either. It's all a part of belonging to the wonderful human family that God created. Right here, though, we come to a little bit of a mystery. Why does God seem to intervene for certain individuals and not for others? I myself have prayed for certain individuals, and I have seen miraculous answers come in certain instances. Yet I've also prayed for others and seem to make no discernible difference. Why one and not the other? I don't know. But we may be sure, and this is point number 3, that God is working with us to help us overcome the pain of our bodies and our minds and our hearts in our life. The psalmist has put 2 wonderful statements together. Psalms 147, 3 and 4. He healeth the brokenhearted and bindeth up their wounds. He telleth the number of stars, and he calls them by their names. That, my friends, is the God of the universe, but also the God of the person. He can know the names of all of the stars in the heavens and all of the cosmos. But yet He cares for each and every one of us. God works with us in many different ways. Sometimes God works directly with that individual and takes away his pain, and I've seen that before, even in my own instance. I one time was working a drill press in high school, and I made a simple mistake, and anybody who's worked a drill press knows that you clamp your work down. And I failed to do that. And I was holding the part. I came down with the drill press, and anybody who's drilled a piece of metal knows that right before the drill bit makes the final penetration of the metal, it hangs. And it hung, and before I knew what happened, that piece of metal went whap, whap, whap 3 times on my thumb, and I was stunned. All I could do is look at my finger, and the first words out of my mouth was, "Oh God, don't let it hurt." And you know, God answered that prayer. I don't know how He did it, but I had not one bit of pain in that thumb. And it should have been just doubling me over in pain. The teacher came running over. "Oh my God, are you in pain?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm not in pain at all." I don't know how God did it, but I really don't care how He did it. All I know is I wasn't in pain when my nail was off. So, sometimes God answers our prayer no matter where they come from or out of what desire. I just didn't want to feel pain. But sometimes we're refusing to listen to God's voice or the wisdom of our extended family. I want to tell you a little story, and many of you can relate to this story or may have heard it before. You remember the story of the man on the porch, and the rains came and the water started rising. A man came by in a car, hollered to the man on the porch, "There's a flood coming. Why don't you hop in the car? We'll drive you to higher ground." The man, being a man of God, simply said, "Well, don't worry about it. God will save me." So the man got in the car, rolled up the windows, and drove off. Later on, the waters reached the porch, came in the house. The man was standing waist deep in the water. And a man in a boat came by, offering to help. Said, "Hop in the boat. We'll ride up here and I'll let you off in higher ground." Homeowner said, "That's okay. God will save me." Boat motored off. Later on, the waters reached the roof. And the man was on the roof, and a helicopter came by. Said, "Get on the rope. We'll pull you over here to higher ground." And the guy said, "No, no, thank you. God will save me." So the helicopter went off. Pretty soon, the man was swept away in the flood and died. And when he got to the pearly gates, he was rather irritated. And he said, "God, why did you allow me to die? I believed you would save me." God simply replied, "I sent you a car, I sent you a boat, and a helicopter. Why didn't you listen and obey?" That's a simple story, but it illustrates the fact that oftentimes our pain is a result of failing to listen to God and those around us offering to help. Sometimes God answers our prayers not by eliminating the pain, but by giving us the strength to bear it. I have many relatives who live in Joplin, Missouri. And I remember going to family reunions when I was a little bitty, and there'd be 150, 200 people at our family reunions, all milling about. I didn't know 90% of them, but I knew they was all related to me somehow. Well, a few years ago, late one afternoon, a tornado came through Joplin, Missouri, and the neighborhood where all of my family had lived and raised their families was basically wiped clear off of the map. And just in the path that tornado went through Joplin, I had at least 20 that I knew of relatives, all living in that direct path, and I lost not one. But other families lost many relatives. I don't know why I lost none and somebody else lost many. I can't tell you that. But I can tell you that it happens in life. I rejoice that none of my relatives got killed, but I mourned because so many did. But the purpose of Christ coming here and doing what He did was not to eliminate all the storms of trouble in our life, or even all of the pain in our life. He didn't come to teach people how to have fun and eliminate pain. He wasn't writing the book, how to win friends and influence people. He didn't write that book. He came to create spiritual character by giving us a spiritual life. Spiritual character. That's what Christ came to do, is rebuild anew that spirit within us that had been destroyed. To His disciples, Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation. But be of good cheer, because I have overcome the world. That's in John 16:33. And through His grace, His loyalty to us, we too can overcome the world. There's an old Christian professor named Dr. W.A. Smart. He had wrote some books back in the 40s, and they were pretty good books. He once told of a father who brought his little girl to the doctor, and she had a cut on her eyelid. The doctor needed to take a few stitches, but for some reason he didn't either have access to anesthesia or didn't feel like he needed to use it for some reason. So he asked the little girl if she could keep from jumping when he used the needle. And she answered, "I can if Daddy will hold my hand." And she didn't flinch a single time. Now, we have to ask ourselves the question, what good did that do for the little girl to hold her daddy's hand? It didn't provide any pain-relieving salve for the eye. It didn't lessen the pain of any medical sense of the word. Neither did it lessen the number of stitches that the doctor had to put in that cut. Yet if her father had not been there, it would have made all the difference in the world. And this simple illustration suggests to us the experience of thousands of God's children. There is a Father, He's strong, He's wise and loving, into whose hand we can slip our hands. Because we don't know why things happen, because we are not God. But no matter how dark or painful the way that we have to go, we can bear that pain without flinching. Even in the midst of unspeakable pain, we can find peace and harmony, safe in the arms of Jesus. This week marks the week prior to Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, when He came in to Jerusalem. And I can tell you that He probably was about to experience more pain than any of us could imagine to have to bear. I can't fathom the turmoil that He was undergoing the week before His crucifixion. Because He knew it was coming. His eyes were fully open. He is even praying the prayer, Lord, if it is your will, take this cup from me. If there's some other way possible, let me not have to walk this road. Yet He was willing to walk it because He was loyal, not just to God, but to His fellow man. Are we loyal to our fellow men in what we need to do, in how we need to work together to win the world for Christ? We may have to suffer untold pain in life in general. But you know, when our eyes are on Jesus, does anything else really matter? Look at the man who wrote the words to that beautiful song about the storms in life when his family was killed on the boat crossing the ocean. Here's a man who, I don't think he did anything wrong, but yet his whole family was taken from him. He suffered tremendous pain. What did our Savior know He was about to experience in the next week? Friends, brothers and sisters, Christ cares for everything about us. He loves us unconditionally. He may have wonderful things for us to do, and we need to be thankful for those wonderful things. But if we have to experience one painful thing to become one with Christ, it's worth it. Christ is worth everything. I preached a sermon a couple of months ago about how Paul had said, as beautiful and wonderful as the law is, this is the law. The words of God are His law, His Torah. As wonderful as they are, Christ is is so far surpassing this, we can't imagine it. The next few days, we should be in a spirit of rejoicing and thanking God that He sent Jesus to suffer so that we could put our hand in His hand and walk with Him. Because that is what Christ came to do, is walk with us and carry us through every bit of pain that we've had. If you guys have any pain in your heart, any pain in your life, Christ will help us to overcome that pain because He wants to do so. All we have to do is ask. If there's any of you here who would like to be prayed for anything, feel free to come up here. We're asking right now that if there's any of you that want to be prayed for, come on. If any of you have family problems, let us know. Let us pray with you. I know that probably everyone here has already accepted Christ in their heart and loves Jesus. But we all need prayer every day. Let us continue to pray one for the other. Because Christ prayed for His family up until the day He was hanging on the cross. And He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Let's be in a state of prayer right now.